Good day, everyone. I am Carl Sosa, your host for this interview. For today, we will interview several guests. Please welcome Hans and David. So, my main question for you both is what is your experiences in sport injuries and how do you deal with those?
The injuries I received over time from playing volleyball is a bunch of pain from the ankle, specifically the ankle, due to jumping a lot and not properly landing back then. And then I, l- I basically played nearly every day that time, so I basically had no clue how to play volleyball properly, how to jump, and how to land, so that resulted in my ankle from hurting. So the way I prevented this from happening again and how I treated it is I stopped playing volleyball, of course, because that's how it all started, and especially I stopped playing any other sports that requires some running and a lot of jumping. So basically I just took some rest and then I just rested my ankle while applying some hot water a bit or some heating pads just to lessen the pain, or even sometimes using ice. Depends on what you like to feel best, but it's one of those two. It's either I use heat pads, a bit of hot water, or some ice.
In basketball, it's very common to get injured, especially the knee and ankle. So one time during basketball practice, I injured my ankle. At the moment, in order to treat my injury, I tried to walk it off, but I couldn't. So I sat down and compressed it with ice for a few minutes to minimize the swelling. Then, I wiped my ankle with a dry towel and wrapped it with bandage to reduce the swelling. While doing these, I also did ankle exercises to recover the ankle's flexibility and tolerance. Then I repeated this process every day until I fully recovered my ankle injury.
That's it for our interview. Thank you, Hans and David, for participating. Contribution will be highly appreciated. After hearing their advice, we ask health experts if their advice is valid treatment to these injuries or if there is a need to change it.
Hello, we are the sports physicians, Clyde and Laurice. We are here to give our expert opinion on how to handle these kinds of injuries.
Hand's injury, from what we analyzed, is Achilles tendinitis. So what is Achilles tendinitis? This is inflammation of the Achilles tendon, which connects your calf muscle to your heel bone. It's often caused by repetitive overuse, especially in activities that involve a lot of jumping. Symptoms include pain and stiffness in the back of your heel, especially in the morning or after activity. From what we heard from the voice clip, his way of treatment is actually right resting, applying ice, and doing heat therapy. The right treatment for that is RICE. But what is RICE in heat therapy? RICE stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. Lastly, heat therapy is a treatment that uses heat to relieve pain, stiffness in muscles and joints. It works by increasing blood flow to the area, which can help relax muscles, reduce pain signals, and promote healing.
From what we analyzed from David's voice clip, he also had the same injury as Hans. He also did the same thing with his treatment. He used the acronym RICE to treat his injury. He also added bandages to reduce swelling. Lastly, he did ankle exercises to recover its flexibility and tolerance. Then he repeated this every day until he fully recovered from the injury.
Thank you for all the helpful advice and thank you for joining this interview.